Welcome to True Freedom, a new podcast for you. If you're searching, longing, if you know there is something more you need in life, this is the podcast for you. Hi, I'm your host, Richard Stokes, and our guide for this podcast is Bodhi, Aldridge, coach, author, teacher, and great friend of mine. Each week, we'll explore a topic and a theme that is likely to matter to you. I'll be putting some questions to Bodhi, and he'll share his profound wisdom around those areas. The idea is that you can take that wisdom and see how it feels to you, sit with it, ponder it, live with it for a bit, and maybe do something with it. This is our invitation to you. So this will be our territory. And we're going to invite you to come and play. We want to hear from you, your thoughts and questions. More on how you can get involved will be coming up as we get into the conversation. One early ask of you, though, as this is a new podcast, we'd really love that you rate and review the True Freedom podcast on Apple Podcasts, especially as it's new. And the more love you can give it early means more people will be able to get a chance to hear from Bodhi and that wisdom that I promised you. Now, this first episode is intended to be something of an overview of True Freedom. You're probably asking yourself right now, what is that exactly? And that's what we're going to dive into right now. And we'll give you a chance to get a sense of some of the topic areas and the themes that we're going to go deeper on across the 9 to 10 episodes that we intend to do in this inaugural series of the True Freedom podcast. So without any further ado, I wanted to say hello to Bodhi. How are you doing, Bodhi?
I'm well, thanks, Rich. Thanks so much for the lovely intro, and excited and a little bit nervous about being here on our first one.
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? I've got that nice sort of like bit of nervous energy going on, and we'll be talking about energy, I know, a lot as we go through this. So I thought, just to give people a sense of why are we here? Why have we decided to create the True Freedom podcast?
Yeah, beautiful question. I guess the journey, Rich, that I've been on, and you and I have been on for some time, is very much what I would describe as the hero's journey. And the aim here for us men is to really have a map and some tools on how to navigate what it is to be a man. How do we navigate the hero's journey? How do we understand masculinity, feminine energy? And so with that background, what I've studied, experienced and learned for myself over the past many years is that the essential driver for the masculine, and we'll talk in these shows about the masculine and feminine, is freedom, is true freedom. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Yeah, it comes from the inside out. And so the idea with this podcast series was to really explore this fundamental topic for men: is what is freedom? How do I experience freedom? And how do I meet my world, my marriage, parenting, my leadership, my business, my relationship with money, to really come from the inside out, from this place of freedom within.
Beautiful. So what I'm getting the sense of is that through this key driver is the desire for freedom, for true freedom. I'm going to get into exactly what that is, because we may have some misconceptions, I think, about what that term can mean. But by following that driver, following that energy, we're going to cover a lot of areas. I talked about topics and themes in the intro that really matter to people. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And, just a short definition around freedom. There's a couple of ways you can look at freedom.
Yeah.
One way to look at freedom is freedom from something. So when we look at freedom from, essentially we're looking from freedom from suffering. And suffering essentially is the way we suffer as men comes from our mental constructs, our thinking mind. A lot of us are imprisoned in our mind, our thoughts, our negative thinking, the stories we make up, the projections we have. Yeah, we also can get trapped in our emotional body. We can get trapped with inability to deal with our emotions. We can get triggered often. We can live on a roller coaster. Yeah, and also our intuitive access to our life force, access to our intuitive body. And so what these tools and processes allow you, and this awareness will allow you, is to be free from these sufferings. Yeah, freedom from. The other way you can look at freedom, yeah, is that freedom is our innate state. It's our true nature. If you think about our natural state, if you really deconstruct all of the conditioning, all of the stories, yeah, and really come back down to your essence, you are free. Our essence is always free. Yeah. And what occurs is then freedom becomes a context from within you can live your life. Yeah. Now, obviously, there are certain people who physically may not be free, yet, you know, the great example of Nelson Mandela, you know, the freedom walk that he took, yeah, from the inside out. Yet for most of us, most of our listeners, yeah, physically we're free to make choices, yet we don't live our life through that context, through that lens. You know, we're not really embodying the possibility that I am free in each moment to make a choice. And so when you start to explore and look at the world that way, yeah, then you start to get to the beautiful nuances of what true freedom really is.
Yeah, well, you know, straight away, I find that very profound and highly relatable. You know, when you're talking about that sort of a sense of a suffering, on whatever level that can be, by the way, and certainly triggers. I find myself, you know, I run my own business. I have a young family, a lot of demands on me. I find myself triggered fairly regularly, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can probably relate to that as well. So, you know, and then you sort of move when you talk about the in our essence, we are free, and then you use that amazing word choice. We have this choice to be free rather than sort of this pushing away from, to be from something, which is creating that sort of suffering. So right in there, I found a lot of material, a lot of lights tinging on for me. So a lot of us to get into, and as I say, hopefully for listeners too. Just on that, you've talked about men and masculine energy quite a lot just in the intro. I just wanted to just get some clarity maybe there. Is this podcast, is it only for men? What's your intention there?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at my work, yeah, so I work predominantly with men, yeah, and typically it's men in their early 40s to mid 50s, yeah, married, mortgage, business, children, yeah, and that's been my journey. How do I navigate that as a man? Yeah, what are the teachers that I use? What are the learnings that I have? So that's predominantly who I work with and who this message is for. Yet, as you know, I work with women as well, and women are very interested in understanding the masculine energy, the feminine energy. Obviously, working with men, I work with couples as well, because this plays out in their relationships. And I've also done lots of rites of passage work with younger men, you know, men in high school, men in their 20s. Yet really, if we were to distill this is predominantly, yeah, the hero's journey for men, who are in that demographic.
Yeah. So this is coming from the context of your personal experience. There's an awful lot of your professional experience that's driving a lot of this thinking, the teaching, the wisdom that you've developed. That's brought us to here to true freedom.
Yeah, and my mantra, having turned 61 this year, and having
looking
been married
for it, my friend,
40
looking
years.
Good for it.
Yeah, thank you. 4 children, 10 grandchildren. My mantra is don't die with the music in you. And so for me, I've got a few more gigs to play. Yeah. I want to share this. I want to share this for myself. I want to share this for men, their marriages, their parenting, their leadership. I work a lot with leaders, whether they're business owners or in corporate, and really coming from a different space as a leader. Yeah. So again, that's part of the why we're here, why the podcast is here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I suppose quick testimonial for everybody who's listening in here. I said that Bodhi and I have a relationship that stretches back around 4 years now, where he came as a guest onto my other podcast, the Mojo podcast, and we had a great conversation and formed a relationship then, and we've been working with each other ever since. As Bodhi is my coach and as my teacher and as my friend, and I know I can see a difference in me in that time in terms of how I've developed. In terms of, I talked about getting triggered. That can still happen. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. However, I know I'm in much better position to, going back to what you said at the beginning, the map and the tools I have for my life are much, much more in place than ever before. And that's what we're really trying to gift to everybody listening, I think, with the True Freedom podcast is if you want to commit, if you want to find change, if you want to enjoy your life to its fullest potential, there's some great stuff in here that I think is going to help, and lots of opportunities, by the way, to get involved in other things that Bodhi's doing, that Bodhi and I are doing together, and we'll talk about those as they are relevant, things like retreats, other programs, one-to-one coaching, that sort of thing. But just to say, this stuff really does work would be my summary. So what themes then around the area of true freedom, and thank you for that very clear definition of what true freedom is. What are the themes you think we'll alight on then, Bodhi, as this series unfurls? And I think it'll be a very natural evolution, actually, as we go on. But what are the things that you've got in your mind that that listeners are going to find important for going back to those map and tools?
Yeah, I guess the overall context. So as men, and certainly my journey, in traditional wisdom, I would be considered a householder. I'm not a monk. I'm not an ascetic. I'm not sitting in a monastery or sitting in a cave. It's a different journey. Yeah, and each of us come with a different dharma. And so, as a householder, when I really look at the map, the responsibilities, the journey, it really is my relationships as a householder with the external world. And so my primary relationships with my beloved, most of your listeners have made a commitment to other. Yeah, and that's a big part of being a householder. How do I keep my intimate relationship juicy? How do I keep the fire? Yeah, how do I learn what the feminine and masculine energy are all about? Yeah, how do I keep my masculine energy charged up? And then again, for a lot of the listeners, one of the other key relationships is our parenting, my relationship with my children. Yeah. What is that relationship all about? What is parenting from the inside out about, as opposed to some of the traditional models, again, which haven't been taught. And for a lot of us, certainly myself, my parents separated when I was 7, and I didn't have a close relationship with my father for many, many years.
Right.
And so for me, navigating this was part of the journey.
Yeah.
As a householder, obviously our relationship with our career, with our purpose is important. And you and I have done a podcast around purpose for any of the listeners through the Mojo podcast, because as men, our purpose, our dharma is so important from the inside out. We then lean into, one of what I notice, having worked with so many men, Rich, and so many couples, is the money stuff. Our relationship with money. What is money? How does money fit in? Yeah. And so again, this is a primary relationship. We have a relationship with money. What's your relationship like? Yeah, do you come from scarcity or abundance? Do you come from resistance or flow? So we're going to lean into that. Absolutely. In the leadership space, obviously, then whether you're a leader in a corporate or whether you run your own business, there's a whole world of relational skills, communication skills, leadership skills, which are important for you to, again, either progress your career or build your business. And so that's going to be an area that's very important on the householder's journey. And one of the other key ones is our relationship with ourselves. Like, we've got to nurture ourselves. We've got to fill our own cup. Yeah. And we do that, whether it's through what we need as men, with nature, with passion, with, you know, our expression in the world, what we do in our primary friendships with other men, our relationships that nurture us, yeah, that energize us. And again, it's often lost, particularly on this journey. Yeah, and I'll talk more about my journey in this series. Yet, you know, for me, it wasn't until my late 20s when I went into a nature retreat that I really reconnected with myself. Because the trajectory was, you know, you go to school, I got good marks, mum said, go and become a lawyer. You become a lawyer, you get married, you have children, you have a mortgage, you're in a legal practice. And suddenly, I forgot about myself. Not in a selfish way, but in a nurturing way. And so does that give you a flavor of the different aspects as a householder?
So many, and anyone who's watching maybe this on YouTube on video will see me nodding away. Yep, that's my life right there. You give me the map to that, I'll be very grateful. But yeah, you know, there's you know, so many areas there that I think people are going to really relate to and have real curiosity around. And here's the thing for everyone listening: we want to hear your questions, your curiosity around these areas. So, you know, as Bodhi's talked to, whether it be about relationship, parenting, career, purpose, money, leadership, developing self, anything that comes to you on that, we're very happy to try and tackle it, right, as the series progresses. So you can get in touch via the website, which is truefreedom.com, and leave us a message there, or one of the email addresses we'll have on the show notes. And we really, really want this to be a very interactive experience for people. We really want to hear from you and your questions and your wanderings, because as you said, Bodhi, I think a lot of this area, this is not stuff that is taught to us. This often comes through having great role models around us in life. Some of us are lucky to have those people, some of us may not. And we have to wait a little longer for that particular teacher to emerge in our lives. And like you know, my parents divorced when I was very young. So I had less of that male role model around at certain key points for me. And, you know, I'm really undoing a lot of that right now. And I'm now 50. It's taken me a long time to get to this place, but I'm glad I have. As the Chinese proverb says, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. And here we are today, getting into some really, really profound areas. Just when you were talking about nature there, just as an example, and I know what we will get into, because I've worked with you for a long time. There are certain practices that really help a lot of this wisdom land and not become something that is heard and then disappears, but becomes integrated. And that's what our wish is, that it integrates with you in your day-to-day life. Is there any practice around even getting into nature right now that people listening to this first episode can start to notice and change things up from the get-go? Is there something you can offer around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as you were sharing, this journey to integration, if I just give you a taste of some of the maps we can explore and then answer your question. So if you think about integration, the integrated man, integrating all those aspects of myself, which is where true freedom lives, from the inside out. Yeah. Then the journey to integration, you know, one way to describe the journey to integration is the 4 steps to integration. The first is, and some of your listeners may be experiencing this now, is the concept of true freedom, the concept of the hero's journey, the concept of being a householder. Then there's the education. Yeah, education is we start to learn something about that. And again, our intention with this podcast is to give you tools, experiences, examples at an education level. Yet the real key is the application. And that's, again, this isn't always linear, but the key is the application. And again, to use a sporting analogy, you know, it's, if I want to improve your golf game, Rich, yeah, when you come to me and I give you some tips on, you know, how to stop your slice, yeah, you've got to apply. You've got to go hit a bucket of balls every day. And so for the listeners, the application of these tools, these energetic practices, these distinctions, these relational tools is the key, because the next step after application is integration. Yeah, unconscious competence. Yeah, where we get to that place.
Yeah.
And so essentially whatever you're experiencing, they're the four steps to get to mastery, I guess. Yeah, which is integration. The 10,000 hours, as many of us know. The second piece around nature. So the 4 systems that we're working with in life. Yeah, there is our nervous system, there is our mental system, there is our emotional system, and there's our energetic system. And again, integration is about being able to align all 4 of those. And again, it's not linear. It doesn't matter where you start. Yet nature, yeah, remember that everything is vibration and frequency. Yeah, Nicholas Tesla, everything is vibration and frequency. Our words, our thoughts, our emotions are just vibration. It's just frequency. And so nature, the vibration of nature, the megahertz of nature is our natural state. What's happened is that you think about our nervous system, particularly the listeners that are, you know, working in the city, busy at work, getting the tube to work. Yeah, our nervous system is getting impacted just through that interaction. Yeah, we know that a lot of people have disconnected from nature just through our built environment, through our work environment. And so nature is one of the fastest ways and key ways to recalibrate all of those systems. And we know this intuitively. Many of your listeners would know when we go into the woodlands, when we go for a hike, when we swim in the ocean, you know, we feel different. Yeah. And the beauty is, you know, having worked with several elite athletes, that experience that we have, and ultimately the experience of flow, you can start to have every day. Yeah, because freedom and flow, yeah, are bed buddies.
All right.
Yeah. Once you start to experience freedom, you'll start to experience flow. Once you start to experience flow, you start to experience freedom. And that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed on this journey, is how do I maintain this flow state?
Beautiful. Okay. And just on that, because that's something that perhaps a concept that people might recognize. I think, you know, when I was just in flow, that meeting, I was just in my flow, that time on holiday with my kids, which can be a bit stressful. It wasn't. I was just in my flow. Then other times we don't have that. So it feels like, and again, I'm speaking personally, a state that comes and goes. But wouldn't it be amazing to have more, to have more flow experience? And I'm pretty sure everyone will be able to recognize when they've had flow and when they have not. So this sense of freedom unlocks flow, flow unlocks freedom. That's kind of where we're heading to, is it?
Absolutely. Again, you know, the key to flow is presence.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you know, the 3 pillars of the masculine, the 3 legs of the stool, is presence, purpose, and passion. And it's passion for life. Yeah. And so the practices I teach allow us to become more present. Yeah, connection with self, connection with our essence. And if you get present, if you align those 4 different systems, the nervous system, the mental, the emotional, and the energetic system, if you remember the experience of flow, or talk to people who get to the state of flow. And often musicians, athletes, people who are absolutely in that moment. They're not thinking, everything's done through the presence, through the intuition. And traditional wisdom knew this. So these practices that I teach will allow you to get there and stay there. One of the things working with elite athletes is that they can find it in their sport, but they don't know how to bring it into the rest of their life.
Right.
And teaching them these practices, because a lot of people get into flow unconsciously. Like, again, if we think of music and athletes, talking to an incredible conductor, who says, I just get into that moment. It's like there's nothing else but that moment. That's presence, embodied presence. And again, you can cultivate that, you can practice that. Nature is a great tool to start to recalibrate your energetic system. And then you can bring it in, you can bring it into your marriage, bring it into your parenting, bring it into your leadership.
Beautiful, beautiful. So this feels like a really rich area that we've just got into here, which I think is the heart of where we're going to go with the podcast, as you say. Freedom, flow, presence, purpose, and passion being the keys to finding that flow. And I just bring you back to the question I put to you, because I people might be, how can I get this? How can I get this now? We're all in such a rush in our lives. Is there something that you, if someone was like, I just love to get a little bit of right now, a bit of presence, and does that involve nature, and what's my access to nature might be, might be, as you say, in the middle of a city. Is there something that you would say, just try this?
The two things I'd say. So if you have the ability to get to nature, whether it's a local park, whether it's the woodlands, whether it's the beach, what I would say is that if you can just get to nature and take your shoes off, and just find a place where you can sit or stand or even lie, and just breathe, and just notice. One of the fundamental practices when I start working with people is our thinking mind is so busy. 80,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative. So we've got this very fast train called our thinking mind. Now, if you want to stop a train that's going fast, you don't jump in front of it. You slow it down. So nature is a great way to just start to slow down our thinking mind. Again, remember, our thinking mind, the Hindu saying is, our thinking mind is a fantastic servant. It's a terrible master. So what we're wanting to do, there's nothing wrong with our thinking mind. It's just in overload for a lot of us. So taking your shoes off, lying down in nature, you'll start to notice. And most of us have experienced it through, whether it's through holidays, through trips away. That's something simple you can do. And the reason we take our shoes off, if you can, depending on the climate, is what it does, it gives us a more direct experience with the energy of the earth. And again, there's lots of studies around this. I mean, the forest bathing now, which is a huge thing, I guess. Essentially,
I believe it's part of the National Health Service in Japan. Just to jump in,
wow.
It's actually prescribed by doctors in Japan. So there we go. get into the woodland, get into the forest where you can. Yeah. The
other one I'd offer people who getting to nature isn't easy. And again, it's one of the fundamental practices for a lot of clients I work with is, if you want to train your mind, start by training your body. Now, what that means is that if you can develop the practice of sitting still for 5 or 10 minutes a day with no devices, with no distractions, and I know for some of you with young children and things, that's not necessarily easy, although most people can find 5 or 10 minutes where they can just sit. And the reason that training your body helps train your mind is that because our minds are so fast, going so quickly, when you sit still, your monkey mind, your busy mind, is going to kick and scream and do everything it can to distract you. We haven't got time for this. We need to check our messages. What about this? What about that? Yet if you can train your body to sit, like training a dog to sit, then what occurs is your mind will kick and scream. But if you did that for 5 minutes a day, for 1 or 2 weeks, your mind will start to slow down. And most of us have enough agency in life to be able to move our body to a chair and sit for 5 minutes without distraction.
Yeah.
Because sitting cross-legged and looking at the wall and meditating is a big leap for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I haven't met anybody where meditation comes easy. Mindfulness comes easy. A lot of people go, oh, meditation's not for me. I tried it and I couldn't stop my mind. Well, that's actually not the point.
Yeah.
It's not about stopping the mind, stopping the thinking. It's about being able to notice what's going on. And so really simple practice, if you can, 5 minutes a day, just sit with no distraction.
Yeah.
Start to notice how busy your mind is. And realize that it will slow down. It's like slowing the train down. It will slow down. You've just got to be consistent, as consistent as you can.
And what a beautiful invitation to listeners to try something which you say might be quite new. It might be something that, as you say, the idea of meditation can be, oh, it's just too much. I can't do it. I won't be good at it. I mean, I've been a meditator for sort of 6 years, and certainly that's what was going on in my mind before I committed to that practice. But just take that time, make that commitment to yourself, as you say, your self growth. Find 5 minutes a day and see across, maybe from one episode to the next as we release them, the difference. I think it's all about noticing, isn't it? The difference of how do I feel? Because we have become, I feel, almost addicted to overthinking. We're taught that thinking is your best course. Think about it. And as you say, all those 80,000 thoughts we're having every day, most of them are negative ones. It's highly distracting. It's very hard to find that presence that you talk about, the present that links to flow, that links to freedom, when we're all in our heads the whole time. So I think a lot, as we progress across the series, we will be talking about, as you say, getting out of our heads and into our bodies, and feeling more and knowing, intuiting more rather than overthinking. So that's another promise from us, something we're going to try and offer. But yeah, you see a lot of that, right?
Yeah, and there's some great resources out there, as you were talking. So Atomic Habits, which is a book by James Clear that has been, very popular in the last 12 months. And I highly recommend it to give you the map, again, around habits and habit change. So if you want to develop the habit of just sitting for 5 minutes a day, and in fact, in that book, he talks about if you want to develop a new habit, and he's got the map. He says, he uses the example of someone who wanted to lose weight and go to the gym. And what he says is that what I want you to do is I want you to drive for 20 minutes to the gym, but I only want you to stay for 5 minutes and then come home. And the client was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I want to do a workout. And he said, no, just get in the habit of doing it for 5 minutes. Then you can build up. And then over 18 months, this person changed their whole relationship with health. Yet the temptation is we're suddenly going to 6 o'clock on a Monday morning, we're going to sit cross-legged, look at the wall and do an hour's meditation. And 10 days later, I give it up. And so these simple tools. You mentioned, Joe Dispenza, obviously a lot of our listeners know some of his work. He's got some great work out there. The addiction to thinking, Eckhart Tolle talks about that as being the biggest addiction of our time, is the addiction to thinking, So there's some great resources for our listeners as well who want to dive into these areas that we talk about.
Yeah. And as a note, we're going to put into the show notes of each episode when we've talked about something. So for example, Atomic Habits, we'll put in a link to that so people can navigate and find it. And as we say, the invitation's there. If it's useful for you, go and find out more. Okay. So, and how else would we like people to get involved, Bodhi, in the show? I've talked about, if curiosity questions come to mind, send them in. What else are we asking of our listeners?
Yeah, well, as you say, we'd love it to be interactive. We want to hear from you what your questions are, what your challenges are. And, there's the website, which we'll post on there. Obviously, there'll be the podcast. We'll have opportunity to comment, ask questions. And again, if you think about that journey of concept, education, application to integration, and we're going to talk a lot about commitment and freedom. Yeah. But just notice where you're at on that journey. Because there's a very big difference between sitting on the fence and committing to something. And so a lot of our listeners will be at the point of, this is interesting. Yeah, maybe I can learn something. I encourage you to start applying it. Let us know what happens. How did you go? Those sorts of things. And there'll be a point, which is a point that you reached, Rich, that I've reached, where you commit. You commit to the journey to freedom. You commit to your hero's journey. And that's the invitation for our listeners, is to share, where are you up to? Have you actually committed, or are you just still sitting on the fence, just inquiring, having a look? And there's no right or wrong. It's just an internal question. And please share with us, and for some people, it might be, I've got a block to commitment. What does commitment really mean? And again, we can definitely cover that in one of these episodes.
Yeah. And on that, the thought that came to me just as you were talking about that is, when will I know that I'm committed?
Yeah. And interesting, because every client I've worked with, in historically, when they reflect, they knew the point, when they committed to something. And because we work a lot with energy, as you know, I will take you perhaps through another podcast through the different energetic feelings of commitment and sitting on the fence. Right. Because you will feel it. You'll feel it in your body. You'll feel it in your emotional system. We know the difference. And we know when we click into that place of commitment. And commitment from the new paradigm, the way we're talking. And again, I've recently done a blog. There's a newsletter that goes out, and I'd encourage any of our listeners, if you'd like to get onto the website and get onto the email list, because I talk about true commitment and true freedom, particularly for us men, because there's a real distortion about commitment. People think they're losing something, instead of realizing that it's the absolute gain. And so we've covered that in the blog, and we will cover it in these episodes as well.
Fabulous. So lots coming, I think, is the summary of that. I think we've given a nice sense of what we mean by true freedom, some of the elements of it already, and hopefully given everyone a sense of how this is going to be as a conversation. I'm going to ask you these questions that are coming up for me. You're going to answer them. People are going to send their questions in as well, hopefully, and we're going to have a lot of fun exploring and providing this sort of map and tools to your journey, which, as I said, I've found extremely useful over the last few years, and I'm sure listeners will too. And then that sort of last sort of reminder, as you said, lots of ways to get involved. There's the website, there's the newsletter that I'd highly recommend that you sign up for, because Bodhi's sending out lots of great stuff on that. And again, when you've heard this episode and you've liked what you're hearing, please get on Apple Podcasts and rate it. Write a short review, doesn't take long, really helps us get to more people. And share it, share it with someone in your life who could do with some true freedom. So Bodhi, thank you for coming on and giving us that sense of where we're going to go, providing the map, if you like, to the journey we're going to take with the True Freedom podcast, and looking forward to our forthcoming episodes.
Yeah, beautiful. And a final reminder to our listeners, is that this is an inside out job, and life is the workshop. So when you stop listening to this, notice how you meet your external world, whether it's your beloved, whether it's your career, because that's where we're going. It's giving us the feedback loop. And when hopefully your listeners start to meet the external world from a sense of freedom, a sense of flow, a sense of presence, a sense of purpose, then everything changes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bodhi.
Thank you, Rich. Fantastic.
We're done. I'm gonna stop recording.
Yep.